Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those who have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. The link is already given at the top of this window with a subscribe button. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to create virtual machines using Microsoft Azure. If we are going to work on on-premises servers and infrastructure, it was really a cumbersome process to create a virtual machine because we have to set up too much of a software like a Hyper-V or a virtualization software, and then only we can spin up a virtual machine. But with cloud computing, setting up a virtual machine or spinning up a virtual machine is just a matter of few clicks. In this video, I'm going to show up how to set up a virtual machine for Windows 10 using Microsoft Azure. We can use any other type of machine like Linux or Windows Server or a Linux server on Microsoft Azure by just clicking few buttons and choosing few options so that Microsoft Azure can set up the virtual machine for you at the background. Okay, now it's time for getting some hands-on on how to create the virtual machine on Azure. For this, we need to go on to the portal. So as we know, portal.azure.com, and so I'm already logged in, so that's why it's picked up my session from there. In order to create any resource, we need to click on create a resource, and we can search for different things over here, or there are also different categories that Azure gives on to create different resources or different services. So let's try creating a virtual machine by going on to a compute, and then if you select a compute, the first thing you get over here is a virtual machine. So let's click on that virtual machine, and once you click on a virtual machine, the virtual machine has different settings to be pushed upon. The initial thing is the subscription. It automatically picks up that's my account is associated with which subscription, and then it needs to have a resource group. Let's say I'm just going to select a DBNet Lab resource group. A resource group is technically a collection of different resources. So let's say I'm working on a project A. I can create a resource A and I can put all those services into that particular resource group. More technically, it's like kind of a folder, we can easily say that. The next thing what we need to give over here is the instance details, that is the virtual machine name. So let's say I keep it as RD Windows 10, and the next thing what we need to select is the region. The region is technically where Azure or Microsoft is going to put this virtual machine into some kind of a zone or a region where the data centers are located. So let's say I put it into a US West. And the another thing what we need to give over here is the availability options. Availability options is like providing the redundancy. So right now I'm not giving any redundancy, but we can have the availability set or availability zones. These are the two major options available for providing redundancy. Let's say if your virtual machine goes down, how you can easily move on to the next virtual machine so that the user experience remains the same and they don't feel any kind of issue with that. These availability zones or availability sets are also dependent upon the region. So if you see, when I selected US West US, the availability zone is not available. I have an availability set. This video we can't really go much into detail about availability sets. Probably in the another video I'll come up where I'll really explain what an availability set is all about. Azure Spot instances, by default it is no. A spot instance is something like where Microsoft Azure can take your machine back so that it can be used somewhere else also. It's more like a shared one, but if you want a dedicated one, so you don't really need a yes to that. Of course, if it is a Azure Spot instance, it would have a less of a cost because it is being used by other sharing mechanism. Size is another very important option where you actually select the size of a virtual machine. Technically, it gives you like how much processor power it has, how much gigabits of RAM it is going to have, what kind of a disk it is going to have, and also it helps you to give you some kind of a costing. So if you see right now, there is a standard D2 SV3, which would cost me roughly around like 109.32 Canadian dollars per month. But if you want something different one, so let's say go on to change the size, and you would get on to the different virtual machines where different cost estimations are there. Like these are the standard general purpose. They have categorized into different one, D2, D4, DS1, and uh, so let's say I just want to go in for a general purpose. Let's say this one, DS V1, V2, sorry, and we select it. So it has a virtual one CPU, 3.5 gigabits of memory. Let's change that, where we'll select more like a RAM of 8 GB, which is this DS2V3. So it's more like the same machine which was opted. And once we selected that, then we need to select the image. So if you see the images, like there are certain kind of pre-configured images for you, whether it is a Red Hat, SUSE, CentOS, Oracle, or Ubuntu or Windows. So because we are going to create a Windows 10 professional version 1809, so there is a pre-configured image for that, and which includes 2 virtual. So this also now changes the size. I'm going to use a username for this. So let's say rdadmin. The password is, let's say I keep it something, and so the passwords must match. Okay, they matched it. And the inbound port rules, because this is a virtual machine which is going to be created in Azure, so we must be able to select an inbound port, that is RDP, which is our remote desktop protocol 3389. So I'm going to allow this. It is not recommended practice to allow in this way, because anybody can actually, like if he has some kind of credentials, he can log in into your machine or can use that machine. Technically, the recommended way would be to allow it through some kind of a IP or binding some kind of a secured access. But right now, for the demonstration purposes, we are just going to use that, and already have a Windows 10 enterprise license on virtual desktop license if you have. So then it involves some kind of a cost reduction for you, because you're already paying for that. So right now I don't have that. So these are the major settings what we did over here. And then let's move on to the next step, which is the disk. So disk is primarily like what kind of a disk you want to attach, or what kind of a disk that virtual machine has. The type of the configuration of the image what we selected, it automatically has the premium SD, but other options are standard HDD or standard SSD. Premium SSD, of course, it is going to cost you much, but the performance would also be definitely more. And encryption type is like your data is going to be encrypted at rest, like once the data is actually at rest, so with a platform managed key, or you want to manage with the customer managed key. So I'm just going to keep it simple. Let Azure manage the managed key, and if you want to attach some another disk, we can create some new disk and attach that existing disk for storage or for some other types of things. But for this demonstration purposes, we're just going to keep this simple, and the premium SSD is already coming with the type of the image what we selected. Let's move on to the next option, that's the networking. So networking is by default the options where you say, okay, we need to keep this virtual machine into some kind of a virtual network. Virtual network is some kind of a small cluster or a subnet where different resources can communicate with each other. I already have a virtual network, otherwise we can create a new virtual network, and a virtual network can have different subnets. So we have a subnet 1 where I'm selecting, like you can see, there is subnet 2 also, which has a different IP range, and subnet 1, which has a different IP range. And there is a public IP which I can assign to that, or you can create a new public IP. So Windows Azure would attach that public IP to that particular one. Network NIC, a network security group, or also known as NSG, is probably where we set up the different things like firewalls or port forwarding or different things. So I'm just going to select the basic options or the default option. Select inbound port is RDP3389 because we want to keep it as to remote into that machine once it is created. And accelerated networking is like, if we want to say it on, it is going to give you more access to like faster network and data throughputs and anything. But of course, this option is available on different kind of the images what we select. And accelerated networking, if we select, is definitely going to increase the cost of that particular VM also. And do you want to place this virtual machine behind an existing load balancer? No, we are not going to put right now because it's just like a simple demonstration of creating a virtual machine. So let's move on to the next, where we say select management, and we want boot diagnostics. No, I'm just keeping it off. OS diagnostics off. System assigned managed identity, where we can have managed identities to access a particular resource, and making it off. This is a preview feature for Azure Active Directory. That is, you can log in with AAD credentials. You can make it also on and off, or auto shutdown. Like if you want this machine to keep on running, you just want to keep it off, or if you want to keep it shut at a particular time, so you can select an on option, and then you give certain parameters for the various shutdown parameters, at what time zone, and do you want to receive any kind of a notification on some kind of a email. So for the simplicity purposes, I'm just going to keep it off. And then we go on to the next tab, which is advanced. And this one is the extensions which you can use for performing different jobs once the machine is on. So let's say I want to have some kind of a bootloader configuration, or install some kind of a, let's say, a web server or anything. So we can have these extensions which would be installed, and they would do some kind of automation jobs for us. So we are just going to keep this machines simple. The VM generation primarily can be on generation 1 and generation 2. Gen 1 is the older technology, and Gen 2 is like more of a UEFI based boot architecture, more secured, and a memory and OS disk size limits. Intel Software Guard extensions are also provided in Gen 2. Let's keep this simple and keep it as Gen 1. Next, move on to the next, that is tags. Tags are like, you want to assign some kind of a key value pair to this machine. So what happens is, tomorrow you have so many of resources in your Azure cloud computing architecture. You want to select a particular Azure resource for billing purposes or for some cost analysis. You can provide those key value pairs over here, which are just named as tags, and then they can help you to group and view reports in a better way. And the last step is to actually review and create, where you can just review all the settings over here. And you can just see you have set RDB ports to open. This is only recommended for testing. Yes, of course, we already know, and this is only for a demonstration purpose. So this looks all good. The validation exactly passed out, and let's say create. So once you say create, Azure is going to spin up a machine, and it says initializing deployment and deployment in progress, and it is going to take some time. So I'm going to use the magic of this video to really fast forward it and come back once the virtual machine is up. So we can see our VM virtual machine has been deployed successfully. There is a notification from Azure. So now we can go to this resource, or we can even pin this to the dashboard. This would help you to see this virtual machine at the first page once you log into Azure, if you pin it to the dashboard. So let's go and play with this virtual machine. So we can see our machine is deployed. Let's go to that machine and play with that. You can use a go to resource. I've already opened up that resource. Once you go to that resource, it automatically brings on you to this window. This is an overview of the virtual machine that we have created. It gives you everything like the location, status, subscription ID, operating system, size, the public IP address, the private IP address, or the public IP6 address or virtual networks to which it's attached. It also gives you some kind of a CPU usage, network usage for the first hour. You can filter on based upon different days what you want really to go about it. The first thing what we need to do with this is to actually like log in into that. So we can go on to the connect, and we can either RDP or SSH or use the another option. Let's go for the RDP, and this was already having a public IP address which was attached to that, and the port number is 3389, which would be used to log in into this machine. And we can just click on the download RDP file. Once it is downloaded, we can just like click open and now say connect, and it would just use for like the RD admin username which we created and the password which we created at that time. So once we click on OK, it is going to log in us into that remote machine through the RDP protocol, and we can see a virtual machine is already spinned up for us in the Azure cloud infrastructure. So it's more like a infrastructure as a service one, where we can have like different things being worked around at the background. We don't really care about how they are being spinned up, which infrastructure they are using, or where it is being placed, or whether two CPUs. So it's kind of a pre-configured resources that Azure does for you in the form of a magic, and then it just provides it to us. Now we can use any software installation on this. We want to use this machine for some testing or for some research purposes. So that's what the beauty of this Azure virtual machines are. This is a Windows 10 virtual machine which we created, but if you want to create a Linux based or a server based, whether it's Windows or Linux, you can create that also. I hope guys you have liked this video, and you would find it certainly useful for getting starting yourself onto the Azure virtual machines. Thanks a lot for watching this video, and hope to see you in my next video, and do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.